It is a split screen that is almost impossible to process. On one side, we have the President of the United States holding a Nobel Peace Prize medal in the Oval Office, accepting it as a personal gift. But at that exact same moment, in the American state of Minnesota, the president is threatening to deploy the U.S. military against American citizens following the shooting of a woman by a federal agent. We need to talk about what is happening in Minnesota right now. Good evening. We have a lot to get to tonight. There are developments in foreign policy, there are scenes from the Oval Office that you have likely never seen before, and there are financial deals being struck that rewrite the United States' relationship with South America. But we cannot start there. We cannot start with the politics or the photo opportunities. We have to start with what is happening right now on the ground in the state of Minnesota. This is the most serious development of the last 24 hours, and it requires our full attention before we look at anything else.
Well, keeping the focus on President Trump, he's threatened to invoke a centuries-old law to deploy the US military to stop protests in the opposition-run state of Minnesota. Unrest there is growing over the presence of thousands of masked and armed federal immigration officers, one of whom shot dead an American woman last week.
If you have been watching the news coming out of the Midwest, you know that the situation has moved beyond political disagreement and has entered a phase of genuine danger. We are looking at a confrontation between the state government and the federal government that has potential consequences we have not seen in a very long time. Here is what we know for a fact. Right now, there is growing unrest in Minnesota. This is not just people holding signs. This is a situation that has escalated into something much more volatile. And the core of this unrest, the spark that is fueling this fire, is the presence of federal law enforcement on the streets of an American state. According to reports from the ground, there are now thousands of federal immigration officers operating within Minnesota, and the description of these officers is specific. They are described as being masked. They are described as being armed. These are not your local beat cops. These are federal agents deployed by the administration operating in force.
Mr. Trump lambasted local Democratic leaders who he described as corrupt for failing to stop what he called professional agitators from committing insurrection. Well, the state governor, Tim Walz, urged the president to lower the temperature on what he called a campaign of retribution.
And in the midst of this deployment, something tragic has happened. We have confirmation that last week, amidst this heavy federal presence, an American woman was shot dead. And she was not shot by a local police officer. She was shot by one of these federal immigration officers. That is the context. You have thousands of masked, armed federal agents. You have the death of an American citizen at the hands of one of those agents. And you have a community that is reacting to that tragedy. But the president's response to this unrest is what takes this story into a different category. President Trump is not calling for a de-escalation in the traditional sense. He is not talking about withdrawing those federal agents. Instead, he has threatened to invoke a centuries-old law. This is a specific legal mechanism that allows the president to deploy the United States military, active duty troops, onto American soil to stop protests. Think about the gravity of that. We are talking about the United States armed forces being sent into an American state, Minnesota, to put down opposition protests that were sparked by the killing of an American woman by a federal agent. The president has used very specific language to describe the people involved in this unrest. He has referred to the local Democratic leaders in Minnesota as corrupt. He has blamed them for failing to stop the situation. And he has referred to the people in the streets, the people protesting the death of that woman, as professional agitators. He says these agitators are committing insurrection. This is the language of escalation. When you use the word insurrection, you are setting the stage for a military response. You are categorizing domestic protest as a threat to the state that requires a military solution. The governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, is trying to manage this situation from the other side. Governor Walz has publicly urged the president to lower the temperature. He has described the president's approach not as law and order, but as a campaign of retribution.
Ms. Machado wants free and fair elections. Donald Trump wants someone he can do business with.
Juro por Bolívar, juro por nuestros libertadores.
Someone like Delcy Rodriguez, who's been sworn in as the acting president of Venezuela. She was number 2 in the Maduro regime, but seems to have won over the US president, who says he likes working with her.
We just had a great conversation today, and she's a terrific person. I mean, she's somebody that we've worked with very well.
That is the phrase the governor used, a campaign of retribution. So this is the reality in Minnesota tonight. A dead American woman, thousands of masked federal agents, a governor asking for calm, and a president threatening to use a centuries-old law to send in the military to stop the protests. This would be the lead story on any night of the week. The friction between federal power and state rights, the use of force against citizens, the tragic loss of life. It is all there. But this is not the only thing happening in the White House, because while this tension is boiling over in the Midwest, while the threat of military deployment hangs over Minnesota, the president was engaging in a very different kind of activity in the Oval Office. If you turn your eyes from Minnesota to Washington, you find a scene that is almost difficult to believe until you see the footage. It involves a medal. It involves a Nobel Peace Prize. And it involves a deal that seems to contradict the very principles that the medal is supposed to represent.
Maria, did you offer to President Trump your Nobel Peace Prize? No,
I presented the President of the United States the medal, the Nobel Peace Prize, and I told him this. Listen, please. 200 years ago, General Lafayette gave Simón Bolívar a medal with George Washington's face on it. Bolívar since then kept that medal.
Let's shift gears to what happened today in the Oval Office. We saw President Trump standing side by side with Maria Corina Machado. Now, for those who don't know, Maria Corina Machado is a significant figure. She is a Venezuelan opposition leader. She is the woman who has been fighting for democracy in her country, pushing back against authoritarianism. She is recognized internationally. In fact, she is a Nobel Peace Prize winner. That is a title that carries immense weight around the world. The Nobel Peace Prize is not just an award, it is a symbol. It is arguably the most prestigious recognition a person can receive for their work in human rights and global stability. Maria Corina Machado brought her medal to the White House. She brought the physical gold medal that represents that prize. And in a gesture that has caught the attention of the entire world, she gave it to Donald Trump. She didn't just show it to him. She didn't just take a picture with it. She handed it over. The BBC reports that she has given her Nobel Peace Prize to President Trump.
On the broadcast, but what it says there is to President Donald J. Trump, in gratitude for your extraordinary leadership in promoting peace through strength, advancing diplomacy, and defending liberty and prosperity, the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize medal awarded to Maria Corina Machado, presented as a personal symbol of gratitude on behalf of the Venezuelan people in recognition of President Trump's principled and decisive action to secure a free Venezuela.
There is video of this. You can see the pair pictured in the Oval Office. You can see Donald Trump holding the framed Nobel medal. He is holding it up for the cameras.
Well, the Nobel Peace Center stipulated in just the last few hours that while a medal can change owners, the title of the Nobel Peace Prize laureate cannot. The decision is final and stands for all time.
For a president who has often spoken about his desire for accolades, this was a significant moment. He called it a wonderful gesture. He seemed very pleased with the object itself. There is a plaque that accompanies this gift. And the text on that plaque is important because it tells us what Maria Corina Machado is hoping to achieve here. The plaque says that this gift is in recognition of President Trump's principled and decisive action to secure a free Venezuela. It goes on to say that his courage will never be forgotten by the Venezuelan people. Principled and decisive action. Those are the words on the plaque. Now, there is a technicality here that we should mention. The Nobel Peace Center, the organization that actually oversees these prizes, has stepped in to clarify something. They issued a statement just in the last few hours. They wanted to make it very clear that while a person can physically hand over the medal object itself, they cannot transfer the title. The Nobel Peace Center stipulated that the title of Nobel Peace Prize laureate cannot change owners. The decision is final and stands for all time. So Donald Trump is not a Nobel Peace Prize winner. He is simply the owner of someone else's medal. But why would Maria Corina Machado do this? Why would she give up her most prized possession to the American president? The answer lies in what she needs. She needs support. She is trying to persuade the president that Venezuela needs new elections. She hopes to win those elections. She is trying to get the United States to back her bid for democracy. She is trying to stay on his good side. But here is where the story takes a turn. Here is where the principled action written on that plaque runs headfirst into the reality of what the Trump administration is actually doing. Because while the president was accepting this medal, while he was smiling for the photos and accepting the praise for his courage, his administration has been moving in a completely different direction regarding Venezuela. In the days leading up to this meeting, Mr. Trump appeared to sideline Maria Corina Machado. He has downplayed her support. The very woman giving him the medal is the woman he has been overlooking. Instead of supporting Machado, the president has thrown his support behind someone else. He is supporting the vice president of the current regime, Delcy Rodriguez. Now, Delcy Rodriguez is now the acting president, effectively the interim leader. She was the number 2 person in the Maduro regime. This is the regime that Machado has been fighting against. This is the regime that the United States was supposedly opposing. But Donald Trump has a different view. He wants someone he can, quote, do business with. That is the phrase. He wants someone he can do business with. And apparently that person is not the Nobel Peace Prize winner. It is the acting president from the old regime. President Trump has been very open about this. He says he likes working with Delcy Rodriguez. He said, "We just had a great conversation today and she's a terrific person." He said she is somebody that they have, quote, worked with very well. So you have the Nobel laureate in the Oval Office giving him a medal for his principles. And at the same time, you have the president praising the quote unquote terrific nature of the regime's acting leader. Why the shift? Why support Rodriguez over Machado? As is so often the case, if you want to understand the decision, you have to follow the money. The White House press secretary explained why the administration is doing business with Delcy Rodriguez. They said she has been, quote, extremely cooperative. They said she has met all the demands and requests of the United States and of the president. And then the specific details came out. We learned that there is a major financial agreement in play. We obviously had a $500 million energy deal that was struck. $500 million. That is the size of the deal. And the White House admits that this deal was struck, quote, in large part because of the cooperation from Ms. Rodriguez. This is the transactional reality. America is already making money from Venezuela's oil. The administration is securing energy contracts. And according to the reporting, Donald Trump cares more about that money, more about the oil revenue, than he does about restoring democracy to the country. This puts the medal ceremony in a completely different light. Maria Corina Machado is standing there, handing over her Nobel Peace Prize, hoping it will convince the president to support free elections. She is hoping that flattery and honor will work. But the president has already made his choice. He has already struck the deal with Rodriguez. In fact, when the topic of elections comes up, the president is dismissive. He says Venezuela is not ready for new elections. Think about what that means for Machado. She wants free and fair elections. Her supporters want to see her in power. But the president of the United States, the man holding her medal, says the country isn't ready. He says this because he has found a partner he prefers. He has found Delcy Rodriguez, who was sworn in as acting president. She is the one delivering the oil cooperation. She is the one facilitating the $500 million deal. So Machado leaves the White House with a joyous wave. She tells reporters she presented the medal of the free Nobel Peace Prize to the president. She meets with senior lawmakers in Congress who believe she should be the next president. But despite the gift, despite the photo op, despite the plaque praising his principled action, the reality is stark. It may be some time before President Trump decides Venezuela needs a democratically elected leader. He has the medal. But he also has the oil deal. And for now, the oil deal seems to be the priority. This is the picture of the current moment. It is a picture of transaction. In Minnesota, the transaction is about force. The president sees unrest, he sees a challenge to authority, and he offers a transaction of military power. He threatens to use the Insurrection Act. He categorizes protesters as agitators. He sides with the federal agents who are masked and armed, even after the death of an American woman. He pushes back against the local governor who is asking for peace. In Washington, regarding Venezuela, the transaction is financial. He accepts the symbol of peace, the Nobel medal, from the Democratic opposition. But he gives his political support to the regime figure who can deliver a $500 million energy deal. He praises the cooperation of Delcy Rodriguez. He dismisses the immediate need for the elections that the Nobel laureate is fighting for. It is a coherent worldview. It is a worldview where principled action, as the plaque says, is defined by what you can secure. Can you secure order in Minnesota through military threat? Can you secure oil in Venezuela through a deal with the acting president? The Nobel Peace Center can say that the title stands for all time. They can say the award cannot be transferred, but the physical object, the gold medal, is now in the possession of Donald Trump. And while he holds that symbol of peace, the people of Minnesota are bracing for the possibility of soldiers on their streets. And the people of Venezuela are watching their oil flow to the United States under a deal struck with the successors of the regime they tried to change. Maria Corina Machado made a gamble. She bet that the highest honor in the world would be enough to sway the president. She bet that giving him the medal would buy her the support she needs for democracy. But based on the praise for Delcy Rodriguez and based on the $500 million energy deal, it appears that gamble may not pay off in the way she hoped. The president has his trophy, but he also has his business partner. And in this administration, business often comes first. We will continue to monitor the situation in Minnesota, which remains the most urgent crisis facing the nation tonight. The threat of invoking that centuries-old law to deploy the military is still active. The federal agents are still on the ground, and the questions surrounding the death of that American woman remain unanswered. But as we watch that domestic crisis unfold, we must also keep an eye on these international deals. Because whether it is troops in the Midwest or oil contracts in South America, the pattern is the same. It is about power, it is about leverage, and it is about the deal. That is the news for tonight. We will be right back.